Have you ever heard a room filled with world leaders fall completely silent, not because of conflict, not because of fear, but because of a single Filipino voice speaking English with a calmness so pure it felt like prayer? What if I told you that this moment did not happen in a school, or a TV show, or a beauty pageant stage? It happened inside the United Nations itself, where silence is rare, politics is thick, and respect must be earned, not demanded. Yet that day, the silence belonged to a Filipino. People say silence is empty, but that silence was not empty. It was full of surprise, full of admiration, full of something the world often forgets to give the Philippines. The moment began with something so simple it almost feels unbelievable. A small cough, a shuffle of papers, and then a man from a powerful European nation whispered to the delegate beside him, "Who is that? Who taught them to speak like that?" In the UN, whispers carry more weight than thunder. And yet, the Filipino delegate standing at the podium did not seem to hear any of it. Or maybe he did. Maybe he heard everything. Maybe that was why he lifted his chin just slightly, like a person ready to say something not for applause, not for his own country alone, but for something bigger. His name was Mateo Ruiz, a career public servant. Not famous, not flashy, not the type who trends online or fills stadiums. He was the kind of Filipino the world rarely sees, because men like him usually work quietly behind the scenes. No spotlight, no stage, just duty. And yet, on that day, duty placed him right in the center of the global stage. Mateo's life had never been one of comfort. He grew up in Iloilo, the son of a fisherman and a church volunteer. English was not something he learned for prestige. It was something he learned from an old radio his father kept beside the window, a little box that played sermons and late-night news from faraway countries. He used to sit on the bamboo floor, repeating every sentence softly, not knowing that one day those same rhythms would echo inside the United Nations. Why would someone like Mateo end up in a place where kings, presidents, and diplomats gather? His path was neither straight nor smooth. He entered government service almost by accident, after volunteering to help foreign researchers navigate coastal towns. They admired the way he listened more than he spoke. They said he had a voice that could calm storms. He did not believe them. He simply thought he was being polite. But politeness, when pure, becomes a strength. And that strength was exactly what brought him to New York that year. The Philippines was invited to speak about a humanitarian partnership. Nothing controversial, nothing loud. Mateo was not even supposed to be the one speaking. The original delegate fell ill that morning. Mateo had 90 minutes to prepare. In the old Manila tradition, he closed his eyes, whispered a prayer, and said, "Lord, let me honor them." He meant the Filipino people, those who built ships abroad, those who cleaned hospitals in Europe, those who worked in the Middle East sending money home, those who wore uniforms in countries torn by war, those whose English carried the sound of both strength and humility. He wanted to honor them. When Mateo walked into the assembly hall, he expected formality, maybe boredom. He did not expect the first micro-shock. A delegate from the Middle East stared at him, stood up, approached him, and asked quietly, "Are you from the Philippines? I heard your people last night in the hallway. You speak English with a light that feels warm." Mateo did not know what to say. He simply smiled, bowed slightly, and said, "Thank you, sir." The man placed a hand on his chest as a gesture of respect. That small moment stayed with Mateo, like a gentle push before a long climb. When he finally stepped up to the podium, he thought he would shake. But something steadied him. Maybe it was the memory of his father's radio. Maybe it was the whisper he felt in his heart. Or maybe it was simply the truth that when a Filipino speaks for their people, there is a clarity that rises from somewhere deeper than skill. The first sentence left his mouth. Calm, warm, steady, not forced American, not forced British. It was Filipino English at its purest, shaped by history, colored by resilience, softened by faith. And the hall changed. People looked up. Pens stopped tapping. Screens turned off. The silence grew. It took Mateo a moment to realize the entire room was listening, really listening. Not out of diplomacy, but out of genuine attention. A delegate from Canada removed her glasses slowly. A representative from Africa leaned forward with both elbows on the table. An elderly European diplomat even tightened his tie, as if adjusting himself to dignity. It was not the content alone that stunned them, it was the tone. Filipinos have a way of speaking English that feels like a hand reaching out rather than a fist demanding space. And Mateo carried that gift without even knowing he had it. But the true micro-shock happened halfway through his speech. It was brief, so brief that if you blinked, you would miss it. Mateo paused, looked around the room as if remembering the islands he came from, and said a single line that stirred something more than policy. It stirred something human, he said. The Philippines may be small, but our heart is very, very large. A simple sentence, but coming from him, spoken in that gentle Filipino cadence, it carried a weight that made several delegates sit back and breathe deeply. One man even closed his eyes, as if hearing a prayer from his childhood. This was the moment everything shifted. Not dramatically, not loudly, but with a quiet force that leaves a mark. And while the world leaders leaned in, waiting for more, Mateo himself felt something stir inside him, something he had never expected, something he had never felt in any office, any meeting, any government event in all his years of service. It was the feeling that his voice was no longer just his. It had become the voice of his people. And that realization changed everything. The room was silent, but Mateo's heart was not. It beat with a certain rhythm. The rhythm of home, the rhythm of a nation that knows how to be humble, but also knows how to shine when finally given the chance. He took a breath. He continued speaking, but deep within him, he sensed a shift that he could not yet name. That shift would lead to one of the most surprising reactions ever seen inside the United Nations. But that comes later, because what happened next was not loud, not political, not dramatic. It was something far more powerful. It was the beginning. Mateo's voice carried gently across the hall, shaping each word with the same sincerity he used when speaking to fishermen back home. Yet something had changed. Those listening seemed to hear not just a delegate, but a man who carried a nation's soul in the softness of his English. And whether Mateo understood that or not, it was already happening. To see Mateo standing there, you might wonder who he truly was beneath the barong he wore. He was not a scholar shaped by elite schools. He was not a diplomat raised in embassies. The truth was simpler, and perhaps more powerful. He was a village boy who once dreamed of reaching Manila, not the world. And maybe that was why his voice felt so honest. He had never trained himself to sound like someone else. He simply became an extension of the Philippines itself. What the world rarely knows is that Filipino English carries layers. History shaped it. Faith softened it. Hardship gave it rhythm, and kindness gave it warmth. Inside the United Nations, where English is often stiff or strategic, Mateo's version sounded almost out of place, like fresh air blowing into a room that had been closed for too long. There were 3 moments that told the world this was no ordinary speech. The first moment happened when a representative from South America leaned toward her microphone, intending to interrupt with a question, but stopped midway. She lowered her hand gently, fascinated by the way Mateo phrased a simple sentence about cooperation. It was as if she did not want to break the softness of the moment. Her assistant beside her whispered, "He sounds different, calmer, like everything he says has meaning," and she nodded, forgetting her prepared notes. The second moment happened a few seats from her. A delegate from a European nation with a reputation for being blunt and unyielding suddenly adjusted his headphones, thinking perhaps the interpreter had softened the tone on purpose. But the interpreter, a veteran who had worked with hundreds of countries, removed her own headphones, tilted her head slightly, and murmured, "That is him. That is really how he sounds." The European representative exhaled slowly, realizing he was listening not to technique, but to authenticity. Authenticity is rare in that room, and he knew it. The third moment was the quietest. An African ambassador, elderly and wise, placed both hands on his cane and stared at Mateo the way one looks at a sunrise. After a few seconds, he whispered to his intern, "That young man speaks like he knows suffering but chooses hope. That is a voice the world must hear." These 3 moments, small and unseen by most, created an invisible wave that moved across the hall. It was not applause, it was not praise, it was something deeper. Respect forming in real time. But the moment that truly changed Mateo happened not outside, but inside him. He had been speaking for several minutes when he saw something unexpected. A man seated near the front row, a man whose face was familiar from news headlines, whose political career was often described as merciless. The man had his hand near his eyes, wiping discreetly as though dust had entered. But this was no dust. This was emotion he was not prepared to show. Mateo paused for less than half a heartbeat, and in that brief pause, he felt something he had never experienced before. It felt like the world was finally seeing Filipinos the way Filipinos deserve to be seen, not as helpers, not as workers, not as migrants scattered across lands, but as people of dignity, people of heart, people whose voice can soften even the hardest rooms. The shift was quiet but undeniable, and while Mateo continued speaking, he began to feel a sense of belonging in a room where smaller nations often fight to be heard. It was as if his English, shaped through years of humble conversations, had opened a door no diplomat had managed to open for his country in a long time. After he finished speaking, he stepped back, expecting polite nods. Instead, he saw something he would never forget. Delegates from multiple nations stood, not in thunderous applause, because applause is forbidden in many UN sessions. They stood simply to acknowledge, a standing nod, a gesture of respect rarely given. One representative even placed his hand over his chest, mirroring what the Middle Eastern delegate had done earlier in the day. Mateo recognized the gesture. Respect returning full circle. As he walked away from the podium, his steps felt lighter, but his heart felt heavier, filled with something he could not yet name. Perhaps it was pride, perhaps gratitude, perhaps a long-held ache finally being healed. Outside, as delegates approached him, shaking his hand, thanking him, praising the warmth of his English, he felt overwhelmed. But the moment that crystallized everything came from a quiet voice behind him. A tall African ambassador touched his shoulder and said, "Young man, your English, it is not the English of textbooks. It is the English of compassion. The world needs more of that. Do not lose it." Mateo did not know what to say. He simply lowered his head in gratitude. And as he stepped outside the hall, seeing the sky of New York stretched above him, he whispered something only he could hear. "Lord, thank you for letting me speak for them." Them meant you, the Filipino people, the millions whose English carries dreams, whose voices travel across seas, whose stories deserve to be heard. Mateo walked on, unaware that his moment at the UN would soon travel across the world, sparking conversations, touching hearts, and reminding nations that the Philippines is far more than what they assume. He did not know yet what would follow. He did not know how deeply people would feel it. He did not know the waves his words would create. But he knew one thing: the world had finally listened. And it was only the beginning.